Hey everybody, I'm Nicole.
I'm Lindsay.
And I'm Sarah, and together we're the co-founders of Whale Tales, a living library of cetacean stories.
And today we have an extra special guest, which is not to suggest that any of our guests who have only been extra special guests are not as special as today's guest, but we are really excited about today's guest.
Oh, it's already off the rails.
So sit back and enjoy as we dive right in.
Woo!
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Today we're very excited to welcome our guest, this extra special, Dr. Jeremy Kiszka.
Jeremy is an assistant professor at the Department of Biological Sciences of Florida International University, whose research focuses on the ecology and behavior of marine mammals, particularly in tropical marine ecosystems.
And we talked to Jeremy about everything. In particular, his research and some of the cool species he works on, like dwarf sperm whales. Plus, he shared his career journey with us and offered some really great advice for young scientists.
Oh, yay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, here's the interview we did with Jeremy.
Woohoo!
So now we're here with Dr. Jeremy Kiszka, who is a marine biologist. He's the assistant professor at the Department of Biological Science at FIU and studies ecology and behavior of marine mammals. All over the world, I'm finding out this morning, which is exciting. Excited to dive in and learn all the kinds of different things that you do. So why don't we start with a quick introduction about you and maybe a brief overview of your research topics, and then we'll go from there.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for having me today. So yes, I'm a professor at FIU, so I'm based in Miami. And I primarily work on the ecology and behavior of marine mammals in tropical marine ecosystems, although I've started not entirely shifting, but I also work in colder places all the way to the Arctic now, but primarily in the tropics. I like warm. And so I study.
Lovely.
Yeah, it is. It can be hard in the field. I'm primarily a field biologist, trying to understand, how the environment shapes the behavior and the ecology of a wide range of marine mammal species, but also trying to understand how, in turn, they can affect ecosystem and community dynamics. So it's both the effect of the environment on these animals, but also how they affect the environment as well. So that's kind of like the big picture of what I do in my lab with my students.
Oh, awesome.
Nice.
Can you tell us a little bit more about your research, like specifically the roles of marine mammals in marine ecosystems and the ecological impacts that you've been discovering and studying?
Yeah, so we've been working with a range of species and trying to understand a range of species. Why? Because what we're trying to do is to understand both. There's 140 species of marine mammals really, and so, what I'm interested in looking at is how they can affect ecosystems both as herbivores. So we work on manatees in Florida, and all the way to apex predators such as killer whales, and how, within killer whales, for example, how mammal-eating killer whales affect communities versus fish-eating killer whales. So the ecological role is not only as consumers, as predators, or as herbivores, but also bottom-up processes, how these animals can affect their environment, directly. For example, manatees, when they move, they feed on seagrass, they move the sediments. So we're trying to understand how it affects plants, but also small invertebrate species. And also how these animals, when they move from one habitat to another, how they can translocate nutrients such as phosphorus or nitrogen, and how they can sort of like garden ocean ecosystems, and how they can make available previously unavailable nutrients, if you prefer. That's basically what we try to do. So there's a range of things that we do. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the most recent things that you published was the Great Whale Conveyor Belt paper, which we talked about on our Patreon, I think in the spring in Journal Club. So that is a great example of what you're talking about, of how animals, marine mammals just go about their normal lives, but are affecting everything around them while they move, both vertically and horizontally. And yeah, just doing their thing, but keeping everybody alive or not alive, depending on what part of the digestion process they're in. Yeah. So what kind of species do you work on in the, like, so what are you doing in the field? Like, who are you looking at? Just kind of everybody? And like, how's that?
Yeah.
What does your field work kind of look like?
Oh, it's very diverse. You know, I'm the kind of person I'm very curious. So I will work from, you know, small resident populations of coastal bottlenose dolphins, work with manatees in coastal systems. And we also work in the open ocean, trying to understand, you know, open ocean species like deep diving whales. Mm-hmm. So I don't have one type of field work. Mm-hmm. And it's too diverse, you know. Yeah. I will sometimes go deploy satellite transmitters like tags on, you know, pilot whales or on sperm whales in the Arctic, or I can eventually study dwarf sperm whales in the Caribbean Sea, where we've been working for years, or, you know, work with whaling communities and trying to understand the importance of whaling and how they affect populations and also human communities. So, you know, my field is very broad. And, you know, I mentioned that I was interested in the role that marine mammals have in communities and ecosystems, but also how they affect people. And for that, I also work with social scientists and geographers that, you know, are more interested in human behavior. So I try to be as transdisciplinary and multidisciplinary as possible to address broader questions, you know, and understand how these animals affect societies and cultures as well. So I think there's a broad range of scope. And I think if you know, try to understand how they affect ecosystems, how can you ignore sometimes, you know, how they affect people? I think, you know, a lot of the research that exists shows and focuses on how human activities affect them. But it also works both ways, how they affect us as a species, as, you know, communities, indigenous communities, for example. And I think it's really fascinating to be able to see that. And it really helps understanding how these animals are important, not only in ecosystems, but, you know, for us as humans. So, it's very hard for me to tell you, oh, you know, I do this and, you know, I focus on that. And fortunately or unfortunately, I don't know, because, you know, it means that I have lots of different projects that I need to navigate. But thankfully, I work with, I have a great lab. I have many people working with me in my lab, but also lots of collaborators. Collaborations is absolutely everything in this field. Mm-hmm. If you want to, you know, be successful and, you know, address big questions, you need to work with people that are smarter than you and with students that become smarter than you. So that is really a piece that is key to address big problems, let's say.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, but I love that diversity and the fact that I, you know, can be in the Caribbean one day working with very elusive species, and then, you know, another I will be in very cold water trying to deploy the tags on killer whales. I mean, it's really it keeps me entertained as well, because you obviously I do that for a living, but also because it's first and foremost a passion, you know. Mm-hmm. It's the passion of discovery and, you know, an adventure. You know, we're adventurous at some point. So,
yeah. I think we've all spent enough time on really bad boats on really bad wave days to know that it has to be a passion, or otherwise you're just going to go home and not be completely wet head to toe.
Exactly. Because you have such really impressively diverse portfolio of work that you have done and are working on. We often have a lot of listeners who are maybe interested in pursuing marine biology and aren't at that stage of their life yet, or are sort of like just starting their undergrad and figuring out how can they kind of like replicate the path that various people we've interviewed have been on. So if you can take a bit of a step back and help share with us and our listeners, how did you come to this incredible diversity of work?
Well, first, yeah, it's a very good question that I don't know if I can really answer. Like, how do you know, I think we all have like very different paths, and we want to take our own. I just came into this field very young. I was a teenager, and I think I was one of the youngest. I come from France, so I started with strandings when I was a high school student, and one of the first things that I started doing is just observing, and I was an avid naturalist. I started as a naturalist, and then you go to college and to university, and then I'm going to do a master's and follow my passion with marine mammals. I think I really started with the NGO world. I think it's a really good place to start. Working with people under people, and spending a lot of time for me in the field was my first motivation. I want to spend time with these animals, observing them and understanding what they do in their environment. So that's how I really started. And then, you knock on doors, and I was probably one that was knocking repeatedly, that at some point, okay, we need to take this guy because he's bothering us. So I started like that in my home country. And then, as soon as I finished my master, I had an opportunity to leave from my home country all the way to East Africa and live on a small island where I developed my own research. So huge opportunity, I think I was 23. And it took me to a place where very few people were studying marine mammals in this part of the Western tropical Indian Ocean. That's really where I grew up as a scientist and working with species that, people were not necessarily working on, and in a region where you were kind of like, not that I was on my own, there were other people doing great work around, but I was atypically young doing this. And I think that's how I got to the field, and, following working on a PhD and so forth. But I think to those who are interested in this path, things have changed over the past 20 or so years since I've been in this field, almost 25 years actually now. What I would say is be your own and own your, who you are and what you want to do. Be consistent with your own vision and what you want to bring to this field. So, and it takes time to find yourself as a scientist. I would say it took me 10, 12 years to really know, okay, here's going to be my field. I'm going to be a community ecologist, a behavioral ecologist, and I'm also going to do some conservation science, which I have over the years. Hard to ignore the elephant in the room, or the whale in the room in that case. When so many problems are faced by these animals and their habitat. So we make your own path. One recommendation that I would eventually make is bring something new, bring ideas. Don't repeat what others have done. Bring new things. Read extensively. I see that a lot with my students. I feel like you're not you have ideas, but hey, look, they've been executed like decades ago.
Right.
Yeah.
So, read a lot, be curious. Now there's a lot of information. You will find it in literature, not on social media. That's what I say to my student right now. Like, go after, textbooks, understand the theory. If you're an ecologist, or, you need to understand the theory and, what frameworks have been used over decades and sometimes centuries to understand phenomenon, scientific phenomenon. So, reading and bringing your own piece. And then, the last piece of advice, besides like spending time in the field, if you're a field biologist, develop skills that are going to be your own. Why? Because, having multiple skills allows you to solve complicated problems or address, complicated questions. And because you need those skills. statistics, for example. It's a really good example of what you really need to be able to bring. It's an indispensable tool, but really bring your curiosity and make your own path. I don't know if that's clear for you, but
it is, and I think it's something that
I didn't think about that before.
That was good.
We like asking that question and hearing various researchers' answers because, even just Lindsay and Sarah and I, we all came to where we are in very different and very winding ways. And I certainly know for me as a young person who was really passionate about pursuing marine biology, the only path that was sort of like laid out for me by teachers and other sort of like adults in my life at the time that I respected and looked up to, it was a very straight, this is the way path. And as soon as I started down that path, wow, did that not work for me?
I got that too.
It was really debilitating for a while. Because it's like, well, if I can't do this path and this is the only path that anyone's ever told me I can take to get where I want to go, well, I guess I'm a failure. Yeah. And so I think that's one of the reasons I love asking that question to our guests so much, is because it's everybody got where they are in completely different ways. And so no, that's not the only way to get where you want to go.
No, you have to know yourself. I remember, I think I was in 7th grade and I said, I want to be an oceanographer and I want to study whales. 7th grade. So in middle school, you have these advisors, like orientation advisors. I'm not really sure if that's the same in Canada or in the US, but I said that. And that lady said, there's only one Jacques Cousteau.
Yes, exactly.
And
only one guy.
Okay, and I never listened to that person as much as I never listened to anyone. Throughout my path, I'll say that you shouldn't do that. That's it's not going to happen. Never listen a second. Like mind your own business. I do make it. Do you?
Yeah.
Like, so especially at that point.
Anyone. Yeah. Well, listen to people that will eventually empower you.
Absolutely.
That's the only thing that I would listen to.
I love that.
And good pieces of advice, from people that are that have a little bit more seniority, and I start getting there, and unfortunately, but it's good because it gives you. If I had to talk to myself like 25 years ago or even more, I would say, don't bother, like do you and keep. But I would correct like a few things, of course, But there's many different paths. No, there's not only being a biologist. There's so many ways to do this, and actually that's what makes this field. I don't like to say marine mammal science, for example, is a field. It's more like a community, actually. And then you don't necessarily have scientists. Like there's many other things. There's many other components like outreach, and so you can make your own very easily. It's just like, don't be discouraged by anyone.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
That's so great. Going back to the field a little bit now, you mentioned elusive species. So I don't know, our listeners probably know that I am obsessed with catching them all, trying to get a story for every species. But we also love to hear about species we don't know about because there's so many things for us to learn. So could you you mentioned before we started recording about Rice's whales and dwarf sperm whales. And we actually met because you had an encounter with Fraser's dolphins this summer, which was a new addition to our species library. So could you talk a little bit more about some of the cooler, unique species that you've seen and worked on?
Oh, there's many, among the about, I think, 45 or 50 species I've seen now. I think I will say that in the Caribbean Sea, where, I started working in the Caribbean Sea when I moved to Miami, which was 13 years ago now, because we are, in the Caribbean. And what was really interesting for me was to see that those species were completely different. And Fraser's dolphins is definitely on my top list of favorites because there's those actually they're big in the sense that they're like thick animals, and I like chubby dolphins. I don't know why, but white
probably
because
you're used to it Atlantic bottlenose.
Yeah.
So the Frasers is one of the most common dolphin species in the Lesser Antilles, like in the Eastern Caribbean, where I work. So we see them, sometimes on a daily basis, which is fantastic. So we're collecting, acoustics. So I work with people doing acoustics. I collect biological samples from these animals. So we try to understand, what they do, like what's their population structure, what's their trophic ecology. We fly drones over these animals, and they're absolutely fascinating animals. They're very fast, sometimes very tight. They're groups, sometimes they're literally on top of each other. But that's definitely, one of probably the top two most common and abundant species in the Eastern Caribbean, especially, is the Frasers with the pantropical spotted dolphin. So we see them, great opportunity to study them. One of the species that I study the most in the Caribbean as well is the dwarf sperm whales. So what's really interesting about these guys and Koja whales in general, we're here in Florida, we're one of the two places in the world where we have the most strandings of pygmy sperm whales. And in the Eastern Caribbean, the island of St. Vincent, where I work as well, is the place where you probably have the highest encounter rates of dwarf sperm whales. So I felt like, okay, I have to work on these species. So I developed some research projects on these weirdos. I mean, those animals are morphologically so different. We know nothing about them. And when you see them at sea in other places, it's usually like an instant, and then they're gone. They're like ghosts.
Yeah.
In St. Vincent, we published a paper last year on that. We have the highest encounter rates in the world, like 20 times more highest encounter rates compared to Hawaii, where there's a decent amount of knowledge that comes from Hawaii, but it's part of like a multi-species research, led by Cascadia Research Collective. And I talked to Robin Baird about that. And, is that we have these high encounter rates, and we see up to, last summer we had up to 7 sightings per day of dwarf. Yeah, absolutely amazing. So we're finally able to collect a lot of acoustic data. Nobody knows, like, if they're using, a mode of communication closer to maybe sperm whales, or do they produce whistles, and I think now we start to have some answers. So you're going to find out pretty soon once we release this work what animals do, and it's we have a great opportunity to work there, and we brought a lot of local NGOs coming with us and listening to their sounds. So and we go back next summer, and very excited to continue this research on these Koja. One thing that we see also a lot there, they breach a lot all the time.
Oh my gosh,
that's insane.
And
they tend to do that, I think, once we are on survey effort, and we travel like 8 to 11 knots. And sometimes we surprise them. And they breach. That's what they do, to see what's going on. And sometimes they'll do it like repeatedly. So we started getting like some nice Koja dwarf sperm whale pictures now, and we can see them sometimes very close to the boat, because they're not only very elusive, sometimes they get curious. It just happens. We saw them spy hopping. What's really fun in St. Vincent is they call them rat porpoises.
Oh my gosh.
They have this radish face. It's true.
They do. That's true. Yeah.
For the cute, which is actually, pet rats are very cute as well. So.
Rat porpoises, and the locals, even the whalers, they don't really target those. But there's still a whaling operation of St. Vincent. They have an IWC sanctioned whaling aboriginal whaling operation, but they also target small cetaceans. So we work with the whaling community on understanding how sustainable the harvest is, and we collect a lot of biological samples with them, and we have local collaborators that we work with that we actually hire on a year-round basis that are conducting a lot of work with the local whaling communities and on the carcasses that are brought. But they primarily target pilot whales and other small dolphins. But they know dwarf sperm whales like nobody else. Like when I talk to the whalers, they'll say, "Well, that's the favorite food of the killer whales that we have here."
Oh,
I completely ignore before we have Caribbean killer whales, and they're primarily mammal-eating killer whales. They tend to have a fairly broad diet, but apparently, and we didn't know that before we talked to the whalers. Hence, the importance of working with these communities. They have the knowledge like accumulated for decades and lifetime knowledge, and they will tell me yes, and they are and if there are killer whales around, we'll see them closer to shore. So as ecologists, it's really important to account for this knowledge, and since it tends to be consistent among individual whalers that we have, although there's like really a handful of people like really harvesting small cetaceans, but they have that knowledge, so we use it. It's really important, and so that to understand dwarf sperm whales, it's also really powerful tool, and it's really fascinating to work with these species when you have an opportunity. It was never calculated. We started working there on actually those whaling issues, but we also started working there on specifically dwarf sperm whales because we realized that it was one of the most common species.
Yeah.
Not abundant, but the frequency of sightings that we had the highest with dwarfs, almost equally than with true sperm whales. But that's it's sperm and dwarf sperm whale hotspot.
Oh.
Yeah. Anyway.
No, that's fascinating. So I'm just gonna zero in on these guys a little bit. So do we know what's the population there and the population in total? Do we have those kinds of numbers, or even just a proportion?
Not really. But the great news about Kogia is that they have very well marked dorsal fins. So
you just need to see
that. Yeah.
Yes, and they have amazing scars. So we're accumulating now. We've completed our third field season there. And we have about, we identified probably about 60 to 70 individuals so far. And, the curve is not plateauing. We're getting new identifications all the time.
Wow.
So, it might be several hundred individuals, to be honest. So we'll see. We keep collecting photo ID data, and we're definitely using photo ID to look at, site fidelity and movements, and so hopefully we're going to be able to estimate abundance and survival. And we've seen females repeatedly, and first year we saw a calf. That was the most exciting moment for me. This past field season, that was the first mother calf pair that I've seen. It was 4 years ago.
Wow.
And this year, boom, I've seen her with a brand new all wrinkled calf. And I like that. All at the same time. But yeah, it was a great moment because we realized, this female is actually hopefully successful at having calves, and hopefully they survive. So yeah, and then you start getting names, and so yeah, it's a really cool project. I'm really excited to keep working on these fascinating, not necessarily very exuberant animals and very demonstrative, but really fascinating.
Yeah, that's really cool. Do we know how long they're pregnant for? Do we know anything about these guys?
Oh, we don't know much about them. When you look at all the monographies and, information that you can find online, I mean, they're barely anything. I think there's like
Yeah.
2-3 papers and their acoustics, their, age. There's a few things that exist, but basically, how many calves, they can have over the course of a lifetime. I mean, we've learned not too long ago, like how coastal bottlenose dolphins, how many calves were produced by females over the course of a lifetime, because we have those few sites, like Sarasota Bay and Shark Bay, where you have those long-term studies. Mm-hmm. So it's new for, some species that we've been studying for 50 plus
half
years.
A century. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So now it's no, we don't have that kind of information. We're learning basically every single day we're out in the water. There's something new that we bring. So
amazing.
That's so cool.
Really fun. Yeah. It's fantastic.
That's
Gosh. Ugh. I want to switch gears a little bit.
Yeah.
Because in addition to all of the accolades that you hold that we've already talked about and the incredible portfolio of research that you've done, you happen to be the president of the Society for Marine Mammalogy.
Oh, yes, that too. Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about the society, Mr. President, and what you're planning?
It has a long history, right? The society has been, we have our founding members with, the first conference of the first biennial conference was in 1975.
I don't think I knew that.
So we have this 26 coming up in October 26. In Puerto Rico. I'm actually heading to Puerto Rico to visit the local organizing committee on Sunday. They're going to be hosting the 26th conference. We had the previous one in Perth in Australia last year, a year ago exactly. So the society, I started being a member in 2007. I attended my first biennial conference in 2007. And I think most of my professional opportunities, I found them there at the conference. One day I decided, it was a few years ago, it was in 2017 right before Halifax, the Halifax conference, that I would want to organize one. So I did one during COVID, which was not fun.
Oh, fun.
It was a very weird one. So it was supposed to be in 21. It happened in 22 in Palm Beach in Florida. And, I started getting involved in the board and working with, great people. I felt really welcome. And I think, it's a fantastic professional organization, society where I've been able to grow as not necessarily a scientist, but, as really feel that it had the sense of community. Mm-hmm. And the big community, we have nearly 2,000 members from around the world, and probably I think 12 or 13,000 people attended over the course of the many conferences. Attended the biennial conference. It's a big thing. I have many different roles with the board. I work with a large board of governors, and we have different committees. Achieving different things, working on outreach and communication, for example. So it's really broad. It's a huge responsibility as well, because I walk in the footsteps of people like Ken Norris, who's one of the founding members, and others that are still here today that I, now work with. So it's a great place to be, when you're interested in this field. You have to be a member. So please become a member. Trying to come to our biennial conference next year. It's going to be fun in Puerto Rico. First ever in Latin America.
Yeah, I just saw that. That's amazing. And exciting. Yeah.
It is.
Well, since you're the president and we have you on our podcast, we can ask you to bring it back to Vancouver one day, please.
Yes, please.
Oh, yeah. I still have the mug of Vancouver, which was in 2001.
Yeah, I was very young and didn't know anybody. I think, I was 17. So it was just...
Did you go?
I was a volunteer because I was volunteering at the aquarium. So I think I did like handing out programs or something along that line. And I would just look at the talks and be like, oh, those are over my head.
That's very intimidating. Yeah. No. So Vancouver, like every so often comes back, it's not like the cheapest place.
Yeah.
That's true.
You have to, honestly, sorry.
No,
but
it's completely okay. We understand.
Yeah. We have to look at, places where people can actually travel and it's always expensive. Like that's one thing that is, we try to help people and to attend those conferences. So we have different grants to attend a conference because we try to reduce like the deep inequalities that we have in our field. Let's be clear and honest about it. So try to give opportunities to students from all across the globe that don't necessarily have the financial means to attend those conferences. So we try to make them as accessible as possible. And actually, as a society, we're going to start creating online events and keynotes, sort of like small online workshops to actually help young members, junior scientists, and students to actually get the tools that they need to succeed in this field.
That's so great.
Yeah, it's coming for early 26. Hopefully, it's a work in progress with our education committee, and we're going to try to bring the society to people besides, beyond the biennial conference. People can also look forward to, attending those online events. So it allows us to maintain this sense of community.
Yeah, that's wonderful. We'll be sure to keep an eye out and share.
I'll keep you posted.
Yeah, that sounds great. Okay, do you have any other thing else that you wanted to add or anything that we didn't ask you that you wanted to answer before we move into our segments?
Honestly, I think we covered quite a bit.
We could probably talk for like 3 more hours, but we should.
Oh gosh,
yes,
yeah.
One day.
There's so much to share. I was very excited to share some of our stories. There's obviously many more, but I don't want to monopolize too much. But yes, no, it's been a very exciting journey for me. And again, I can't thank you enough for having me today. It's so much more satisfying to actually share some of the stories. Sometimes, I feel, in the field, like in really amazing places, it becomes way more exciting whenever you can share the stories that you live,
absolutely.
in the field and the great people that you meet along the way. Also, I think it's one of the most amazing thing in this field is all these encounters and people that actually gave you the opportunity to do this, but also all the colleagues that you and the friendships that develop along the way. So that's also the great thing about what we do.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Before we continue with the rest of the episode, we want to take a moment to tell you about how you can support our podcast and everything we do at Whale Tales.
You can join us by becoming a patron at patreon.com/whaletales. You can join us for $1 a month at the porpoise level, $5 a month at the dolphin level, or $10 a month at the whale level.
And each level comes with a variety of perks, including polls, thank you postcards, access to extended interviews or stories with guests, and producing your own fun flipper fact segment of the pod. Plus, we have 2 additional podcasts we do over on Patreon. For our dolphin and whale level patrons, every other month we do a journal club where we read a scientific article and then talk about it and the findings and what we think of them. And then on the alternating months for our whale level patrons, we do a Whale Tales Watches where we watch a thing or sometimes read a thing that is marine biology adjacent in fiction, and then we tear it to shreds on its biological accuracy. It's my favorite time of every 2 months. This month we had a journal club for our dolphin and whale level patrons. It was a really interesting article. So if you are a dolphin or whale level patron or are interested in becoming one, check that out over on Patreon.
Thank you so much to all of our patrons. You are amazing, and we are so grateful for your support.
And if you aren't able to support us financially, we completely understand. There are still so many other things that you can do to help out the podcast and everything we do at Whale Tales. You can leave us a rating and review on your podcast platform of choice, principally Apple Podcasts or Spotify, but really anything works. And that is a really awesome way to help other people find us. Or you can just specifically tell other people about us, like maybe your cetacean or science or podcast-loving friends, or just people you see on the street or shopkeepers, your friendly neighborhood pizza delivery person,
Spider-Man.
Anybody. Share the Whale Tales love so that everybody else you know can listen to, and then you'll have so many fun people in your life to talk to about Whale Tales.
Hooray! You can also follow us on social media at whaletales_org or whaletales.org, all the various places. Plus, you can send us your feedback so we can make the podcast even better. All right, Nick, take it away.
It's time for Fun Flipper Fact, Fun Flipper Fact. We want to hear your fun flipper fact.
Oh gosh, I forgot about that one.
Oh no. Well, you do know a lot about species that we do not know a lot about, so maybe you can share a fact about that. And while you're thinking, I'll tell a story. My 4-year-old niece this weekend asked me how deep whales can dive. And when I told her, and then I told her about sperm whales eating giant squid, the look on her face was just pure shock and delight. She, like, as she's a 4-year-old, she did that jump, like, even though, like, she absolutely cannot fathom what deep ocean means, although she does love gulper eels, so she did ask if they could ever meet sperm whales and gulper eels.
Interesting.
But yeah, so the joy of sharing random facts with small children is
Random facts. Oh yeah, I mean there's so many of them, and some are more fun than others. I'm trying to think like very quickly because I'm getting the question right now, and maybe you told me earlier that you would ask that kind of questions. I never thought that dwarf sperm whales were as stinky as they are, actually.
Oh, okay, there we go.
When they
Love
jump
stinky whales.
Well, they have this capacity. They're not really fast moving animals, so they need to have other weapons to eventually discourage predators such as killer whales to get them. And they produce that ink-like substance, like squids, whenever they're chased by a predator. And when they're surprised, they will eventually do that. When they strand, it's really well known that, they release that material that looks like very dark blood or even poop, but it's not poop.
Yeah.
And so what's really interesting is we had dwarf sperm whale actually breaching close to the boat and producing that ink-like substance, and I can guarantee you that it's not great. It's very powerful. It's really powerful. So it makes you wonder, like, how does that really discourage predators and from pursuing them? Because again, they're slow. But I can tell you from my human perspective that it's not great. So that's one that was, I don't know why, because we just talked about that.
Yeah.
It's definitely on the top of my list.
Yeah.
But there are many other fun facts. That's for sure.
No, I can imagine. We know what whale blows smell like, and if those are bad, I can only imagine what other excretions.
Yeah, it's funny how it varies from one species to another. But, as you know, I'm interested in whale poop. And actually, whale pee is equally to even more important. We talk about whale poo all the time. But what's really bioavailable for phytoplankton to actually grow is actually, urine. Urine is super critical. So another fun fact, I don't know if that's really fun, but I've been doing some research on dolphins around tropical islands. And one day, I was still doing my PhD, and I was working a lot with spinner dolphins in the Indian Ocean, and they rest during the days, not inside bays, but close to reefs in where I was working, a small island located between Madagascar and Mozambique. And I was seeing these dolphins pooping continuously. I wonder how it affects fish and reefs in general. And many years later, because I had the samples, from fish, from, seagrass, from, I was collecting water samples to understand, the base of food webs there. And I ran some analysis with some colleagues, and we realized that, the dolphin excretions were very important for reefs, and were bringing a huge contribution to coral reef fish. And that 30 to 40% of what reef fish actually can get in terms of production comes potentially from dolphins. So it's huge. And it's all like nutrients that they bring from the open ocean. They feed on small pelagic fish, and then they come to rest and socialize close to reefs, and they bring all these nutrients, which is fascinating. So dolphins may have like some pretty important impact on reefs, especially when they bring what we call like allochthonous nutrients from a different place. So they recycle.
Yeah.
So that's another really cool thing. So we talk about whale poop, but I think dolphin poop and pee is also very important. Let's talk more about dolphin pee.
Yeah, I'm in. See, that was great. You came up with great 2 facts right then. I loved it.
Awesome.
Okay, now we have an extra fun flipper fact. Does that mean we get an extra song?
Yes, we do. Because this is a Patreon-produced fun flipper fact. This fun flipper fact comes from our patron, Charmaine. Thank you so much. And so, Charmaine, here is your song. It is time for a fun flipper fact. And today's fun flipper fact is Charmaine's. Charmaine has a fun flipper question, and now we're gonna answer it and make it a fact.
It's beautiful. Charmaine, you can use that for your outgoing voicemail. If you want. Sure. It'll be such a totally normal thing for your dentist to hear when they call.
Amazing.
So there you go. Another plug to become a patron. Not only can you produce your own fun flipper fact, but you get your own song.
Oh, great.
Charmaine sent in this question. In the last few days, we have had sightings off the South Island of New Zealand of white humpback whale, possibly the famous Migaloo. Ooh, exciting. That's me inserting that. So my question would be if it is known what percentage of whale populations are born white, or in particular, what percentage of humpback whales are born white. Thank you so much, Charmaine. Excellent questions. I will do my best to answer them, but I'm going to start with no. No, it is not known what percentage of whale populations are born white. There's so much more research that would need to be done in that. We only have kind of a passable understanding of the sort of different color morphs where, and what I mean by that is where a calf of a species is born with an unexpected color compared to what the sort of typical coloration of that species is. We only have an understanding of that, and it's a very small understanding of that in a handful of cetacean species. Since you were mentioning humpbacks and you were bringing up Migaloo, so cool, by the way. Migaloo is a really interesting case. I believe we spoke about Migaloo and color morphs, specifically white colorations, on a podcast episode at least a year ago, I want to say. Migaloo, we believe, is a true albino, but not all white whales, and I say that with big quotation marks, where sort of like a calf of a species that is not typically white is born white. Not all of those white whales are true albinos. Your question didn't ask about albinism specifically, but I do want to bring it up because that is an interesting sort of like additional challenge to answering this question, which is like, why are calves white in species where white isn't the sort of like default coloration? So since you asked about humpback whales, what I could find there is it's estimated that there's about 80,000 humpbacks, give or take, in the world right now out there in the ocean. Obviously, we don't know every single one of those 80,000 whales, but documented out there in the ocean right now, there are 3 or 4 white whales, Migaloo being one of them. The others, again, not necessarily knowing if they are albinos or not, or if they are leucistic, which is where just sort of like some of the pigmentation is missing. But at least let's just say, for sake of argument, there's 80,000 humpbacks and there's 4 white ones, not factoring in any of the unknowns about how many calves might be born white but not survive, which would definitely obviously change the math on this. But if we do the math on just those very, very simplified numbers, 80,000 humpbacks, 4 white ones, the percentage there is 0.000000405. So teeny tiny. And again, as I alluded to, there's just so much that we don't know that would have to factor in to that equation. So it could be a tiny bit higher than that if there are, for some reason, calves being born white but not surviving, which, I couldn't find necessarily any record of, but who's to say? And it could be much smaller than that if, in fact, there are, more than 80,000 humpback whales and we're only using 3 that are white, or who knows. Because you were asking about New Zealand, though, one of the other things that came up when I was looking into this was about another cetacean species found in the same part of the world that still has a small percentage of white-born color morph, but larger than 0.00005%. And that is the southern right whale. So there's been a few studies recently looking at these gray morphs, as they're called, southern right whales, found between New Zealand and Antarctica. And all of them are born white. So they're kind of like the inverse of beluga whales, where beluga whales are born gray and turn white as they get older. These gray morph southern right whales are born white, and then as they get older, they start to develop a darker ring, sometimes called a collar, around sort of their neck area, and also various patterns of spots along their body. And what's really interesting about them is that it's estimated that between 3 and 4% of all southern right whale calves are white when they're born. Still really small percentage, but, much higher percentage than the humpbacks, and no one knows why. So I hope that answers your question to the best of our ability. Thank you so much for being a patron, Charmaine, and thank you for producing this fun flipper fact. We just can't thank you enough for everything you do to support Whale Tales, and we hope that this was a satisfactory answer. Have a whaley great day.
Thank you so much, Charmaine, and all of our patrons who, the $10 level, who have produced their fun flipper facts. We love facts. I don't know. We love to be nerds.
And patrons.
Yay! Okay, so now we're going to move into the Whale Tales section of the story. So you've already sent us your Fraser's dolphin encounter from this summer. Do you have any other encounters from your time in the field about any species at any time that really stick out as memorable?
One comes just right now, and that's another deep diving whale. I was doing some expedition in the tropical Indian Ocean off the Seychelles. So it's located in the western tropical Indian Ocean. It's actually very close to the equator. And we're conducting research on pygmy blue whales there. Mm. And we've encountered a lot of different species, actually 21 species in 21 days.
Oh my God.
That was absolutely mind-blowing.
Yeah.
And the one encounter, though, we'll remember, is a group of about 100 to 120 Longman's beaked whales.
Oh.
So these beaked whales are fairly big, 6-7 meters long. And they were chased by about 200 pilot whales, with offshore bottlenose dolphins and a few Fraser's dolphins. So there were hundreds of whales and dolphins, and we were able to get on a small dinghy to actually collect biopsy samples on these Longmans. And I remember a colleague working a lot on beaked whales around the globe. I think he's seen the most beaked whales, Bob Pittman from the Marine Mammal Institute in Oregon State. And I said, "Oh, you're probably the one who biopsied Longman's beaked whale for the first time." It was absolutely amazing to see this spectacle. And I still remember that. I don't know how much I screamed that day, but it was amazing. It was almost sunset when it happened. So the ambience was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And, so it's a great memory. It was, I think, 4 years ago. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
Really fun. Amazing animals.
Yeah.
That was the one.
That's fantastic. Yeah. So good. Okay. So before we wrap it up, we just want to ask you about a call to action for our listeners. We like to end with something not necessarily small, but something that is feasible for our listeners to do to help marine life and marine ecosystems around the world. We've got, so anything that comes to mind for you that's topical or specific to animals that you study or not, we would love to hear it.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many ways that listeners can potentially help. I don't know where to start. There's different things. I know that personally, if you're interested in supporting research, I work with a company called Follow. I don't know if you're aware of Follow, but they have a website. I don't want to make any promotion. I don't know if I can.
It's okay.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, but they actually support some of my research. So we actually deploy tags on dolphins and whales, and people can actually support research by buying a bracelet online, and they can actually follow some of the animals that we tag. So that gives an opportunity for people to see what we do, who are the animals, what species, and track them in real time. And see what their movement look like. So we do that for different species in the Gulf of Mexico, for example, with the spotted dolphins, Atlantic spotted dolphins and bottlenose. I work with the Sarasota Dolphin Research Program and Randy Wells on that, or we work on sperm whales, from travel, migrating between Norway and the Caribbean. So that's a great way to support research. But I would say, that get involved. Like if you really want to make a difference, get involved, like join the SMM is a really good thing to do. And that helps the society, and it gives you lots of different opportunities if you're interested in this field. So sorry, I gave you two, but
no, we love it.
Completely okay.
Yeah, it's great. The society one definitely goes back to what we were talking about with career opportunities and joining the community. But the fallow one is a great way, we know specifically here with the Southern residents, but just everywhere, looking at all sorts of adoption programs of like having an individual, having one animal that you can follow really helps connect people with the species or whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah. We reached millions of people.
Yeah.
With and it's really supporting our research in the most effective way and sustainably, interestingly. Because, it's been years now, and it's
that's fantastic. Yeah, I know. Just there's a humpback on the East Coast called Spoon, who we have a few stories about, and those are the stories I get comments about the most. Is every couple of weeks, it's like, we adopted Spoon, or I adopted Spoon from this for my daughter, or that kind of thing. So it's just like it's ongoing, and it's
they can exactly. That's a really good way to connect.
Yeah,
and we follow what's great as well is that we now have plush, and kids can actually also connect with these animals. So they have the plush, not necessarily the bracelet, and they can actually follow their animals, their own animals. Which is, and you're absolutely right. When that's a really good way to connect. So by supporting research, you make a big difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
Amazing.
That was so great. Thank you so much, Jeremy, for talking with us and sharing all of this stuff. And hopefully one day we will be able to talk again more about dolphin pee and all of the other species that you've seen in the world.
Anytime.
I think that brings us to the end of today's podcast. And we would love to hear your thoughts on this episode, or any episode, or anything. So please visit our website, whale-tales.org, where you can find links to all of our social media handles so that you can drop us a line.
You can also head to our website to subscribe to the podcast, learn about supporting us and becoming a patron, and you can check out over 1,600 whale, dolphin, and porpoise stories.
That is whale-tales.org. Tales like stories, not tales like the animal.
You can find Jeremy on Instagram at Marine Mammal Ecology, all one word.
We wanted to also give you a bit of an update on our December schedule. So we will have no regular feed episode for December because of scheduling challenges, but we will have a Whale Tales Watches episode on our Patreon feed. And we will also be sharing with you an old Whale Tales Watches from the past, a Christmassy one that we did last year or the year before. We figured we would share that as a little sort of special holiday gift from our slightly deranged brains to yours.
Enjoy.
So yeah, hopefully it's something a little silly and a little lighter. Feel free to let us know how you feel about it. And if you really enjoy it, then there's a bunch more of them on our Patreon.
Mm-hmm.
All at various levels, very close to that of deranged.
Yes.
And of course, if you have seen a cetacean, we would love to add your story to our library. That's the heart of what Whale Tales is. So if you have a tale to share, please click the share link on our site. Contact us on social media. That's whaletales_org. Or you can email us a voice memo of your amazing encounter. We would love, love, love to hear it.
Finally, we want to acknowledge that we recorded today's episode on the unceded territories of the Coast Salish peoples and the Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, Sianu, and Sauk nations. Jeremy sent this land acknowledgement that he wanted us to share. We acknowledge that we're on the traditional homelands of the Tequesta, Seminole, and the Miccosukee peoples. We honor their past and present stewardship of this land, and we recognize their enduring connection to these waters, lands, and ecosystems. We express gratitude and respect to the Indigenous people who continue to live and care for Southern Florida.
Thank you all so much for joining us, and we hope, as always, that you have a whaley great day.
Yay.
Bye!
Bye.